First, we're going to start with some introductions, and then I'd like to talk a bit about the HALT experience from the perspective of the student as well as the perspective of a faculty member. We're then going to dig into building your personal brand, reinventing your personal brand. What is a personal brand? From there, we're going to talk about one promise, and I'll explain that towards the end. So, without further ado, in terms of introductions, I'm Professor Pamela Campagna, and I am an MBA graduate from the American University. I've also been doing doctoral work. So my background is primarily in marketing, sales, and management. I began after my MBA with 12 or so years working in technology companies across a variety of different functional areas. In 1997, I started my own business. I'll talk about that in a minute. You'll see a lot of the HALT professors really combine work in the field, work in the business world together with their teaching. So that's a little bit unusual from some of the universities that I've worked at in the past. I've worked at a number of different universities teaching marketing courses, sales, leadership, entrepreneurship, gender and development, but HALT is quite different in terms of its curriculum and its focus on being the most relevant business school in the world. I mentioned my work in my company, which I'll talk about in a moment as well, and also volunteerism and building community. That's something that's very important to the work that I do. My company is called Blue Sage Consulting. Here's my website. And I work with global organizations, nonprofits, government agencies, small to medium-sized businesses, and I work with them to improve their resources, their strategy, their marketing, and their sales. So you notice a lot of these brands are familiar to you. I've worked quite a bit with Microsoft and Cisco and tech companies. I've also worked quite a bit in services industries like healthcare. And so the nice thing about this is that I'm able to bring my experience working in the field in organizations into the classroom. As a matter of fact, the class that I finished teaching about 2 weeks ago is a consulting course. And there I bring in companies such as these with real live consulting problems that our teams of students work on over the course of the class. So together with the rest of the faculty, we bring business into the classroom. And so in terms of the courses that I teach global strategy and management, future mindset and future challenge, which is a capstone course we have at the end of the year. Leadership courses. Today we're going to focus on leadership and communications. Presenting with data, which is a 1-credit course that I've taught, as well as marketing courses. Most of our faculty are very involved in working with our students, not only in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom. And so I advise a number of the on-campus clubs, the Women in Business Club, the Consulting Club. We have a master's thesis program. And then there are a lot of external opportunities, especially on the Boston campus, for students to get involved in other universities or other programs. So for example, there's an organization called IXL, and they have an Innovation Olympics. It's a competition. And so groups of HALT students come together and they compete, and they approach faculty members to actually work with them, coach them as they compete in the Olympics. Now, you'll also see that most of our faculty are very active in academic research. For myself, I'm very active in looking at different aspects of women in leadership. I also like to do research around teams, how teams perform, how effective they are, depending on how they come together, how they organize themselves, how they operate. I also work on entrepreneurial business development research in the Middle East, and I'll be going to Amman, Jordan, to continue that research this fall. And so that's a bit of an overview of my background and who I am, and give you a visual look at our classroom. This is one of my favorite classrooms. It's a flexible classroom on the Boston campus, and we've been teaching in a hybrid mode since last summer. And throughout COVID, we've been teaching some of our students in the classroom, some of our students online, but really having an inclusive and a cohesive classroom experience, regardless of where our students start their course from. We'll continue to do that this year. However, the majority of our students will begin on campus. And that is the official formal part of my personal brand. So this is how I present myself to the world. But there's also another side of me that makes up my personal brand. And many people don't know this about me, but I happen to be something of an obsessive gardener, I guess you would say. Flowers in my garden are just very special to me. Vegetables as well. These are basil plants growing in my garden. And of course, vegetables, basil, you see some lettuce, cucumbers, zucchini. So the natural next step would be then to do something with them. And these are zucchini breads that I made, as well as exploring pickling. And so some of my students began to call me Professor Pickles. And so there's another element, another dimension of my personal brand. And so as you think about your personal brand, reinventing your personal brand, what are some of the things that are little known facts about you that may be interesting to other people as you are networking, as you are interviewing for your next job, or as you are joining your new cohort at HALT? So now I'd like you to think a bit about putting yourself in the spotlight. So give some thought here to who you are. Think about your passion. What are you passionate about? I just shared a couple of things that I'm passionate about. And then what is one little known fact about you? Give that a couple of seconds thought, and then if you could please start adding it into the chat. It looks as though this group is not very shy, so please go ahead and enter into the chat. Who are you? What is your passion? And what is one little known fact about you? Okay, Mulk. Ambitious young engineering student, passion is providing solutions. So think about what type of solutions. Someone may ask, that's great. Give me an example. So in the back of your mind, are there other examples? Okay. And oftentimes we start with the who we are, which is the easy part. We usually associate that with a job or a title. Are there other ways that you might be able to describe yourself and who you are? So maybe some of your characteristics. I'm open-minded, I'm a goal-oriented person. And then when I look at my passions, giving back to community, leaving a good mark. How might that turn into a conversation starter? Okay. Passion is building a network, getting knowledge from different people, supporting organizations remotely. I'm still a student graduating. Ah, that's who you are. What is one little known fact about you folks? I see a lot of passion, social justice, okay, business analytics. Connecting people with nature. Interesting. Being a global citizen. Wonderful, wonderful. Excellent. All right, you can keep entering into the chat. I want to move on to another question, though. So keep thinking about who you are, how you present yourself to the world. Give some thought to your passions, whether they're related to community, to work, to arts, to entertainment, to study, and then one little known fact about you. The next step in looking at our personal brand is to think about what personal brand actually means. And so consider your skills, your personality. Does that come through as part of your personal brand? What are your values? How were you raised? What's important to you? And then those passions. My passion for gardening and for cooking. How might I weave that into my personal brand and how I present myself in a business setting? So recently, actually last Sunday, a few days ago, I participated in the Academy of Management with some of my colleagues from HULT, some other HULT professors. And we did a session at the Academy talking about teaching, hybrid teaching, and our experiences in the classroom and also virtually working with our HULT students. And so here is an example of my personal brand. And this is my LinkedIn. For those of you that may not be familiar with LinkedIn, we should all have a LinkedIn profile. So start working on yours if you don't have one already. But notice my image in the upper left. I have an image behind my picture, and that image is a subtle way of my putting my personal brand out there. It's not a building. It doesn't look business-like, but it's professional, and yet it still hints at my passion for gardening, for example. And so think about, what is your personal brand saying about you, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, any of your social channels, whether it's how you present yourself when you're meeting someone for the first time on Zoom or meeting someone for the first time in a conference, for example. And so I'd like you to do something that many people have already done, I'm sure, is to Google your name. And Google your name and see what comes up. You may need to go a couple pages down in Google to find you. You may need to select images to find yourself, find an image of yourself. But take a moment and Google your name and what comes up. So I'd like you in the chat now to share with the rest of the group here an example of your personal brand. What comes up? What does the world see from you? Ramadan, oh, wonderful name. So there's an association between your name and the holy month. Others? Okay, so LinkedIn and then a blog and then social media sites. So if you're active, then there may be a lot out there, but really critique, what is it that the world is seeing of you? What impression do you think? Okay, info about famous people with the same name, Rohit. Okay, and that's why I say you may have to dig a bit to really find yourself. Okay, Instagram comes up first and then your LinkedIn profile. There are ways that you can influence what comes up first in the searches. Okay, performance in swimming competition. So if you think about your passion, is there a way that your passion and that part of your personal brand is out there on display in social media? All right, LinkedIn, universities I've been to, okay, your accomplishments, former football player, excellent. So I would encourage you to think about when you're reinventing your personal brand, take a critical look at what your personal brand is now, what the world sees now. Now, social media, that's something that we can all do, but consider face-to-face interactions. Consider your reputation, your credibility, because all of that goes into creating or reinventing your personal brand. All right, so let's move on here. One of the exercises I'd like to do in my classes is to take a personal inventory now and to really assess what our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And we do this a lot when we are doing a market analysis in a strategy class, for example. We might look at our competitors and say, okay, let's do a SWOT analysis. Well, this is a personal SWOT analysis. And the way that this works is we look at our strengths. So what are you good at? What are you known for? Are there things that you enjoy? Those are your strengths. And when we think about opportunities, what we want to do here is find different ways for us to take advantage and to leverage those strengths. Similarly, if we consider our weaknesses, and those are things that you're not great at, maybe you avoid doing, maybe you're working on improving them. And so in order to minimize their impact, you want to, so that they don't become threats, you may want to act in a different way. So consider, what are your personal strengths and weaknesses? And then how do you turn the strengths into opportunities? And how do you minimize the weaknesses so that they don't become threats? Now, here's an example. I put together a simple one, Professor Campagna's personal SWOT. I'm good at presentations. I think I'm pretty good. I teach a lot, I present a lot, and I think I'm a good listener. So those are two of my strengths. And so one opportunity that I look for is to offer to coach students who are speaking. And as a matter of fact, I'm coaching two of our former students who are going to be speaking at graduation next week. And so that's an example where we look at a strength and how do we turn that into an opportunity. Similarly, one of my weaknesses is I'm really not that great with numbers. Excel spreadsheets and Tableau, I kind of stay away from. And so when I'm working in a group of people, I don't usually raise my hand to do data analysis because I know that's one of my weak areas. I'm working on it, and so that's an example of how you might use a SWOT analysis to really take inventory of yourself, of your current skills, and look at ways for you to maybe work on them. And I see Rohit, he has similar SWOT. I think there are many people that have similar SWOT profiles to this one. And so all of this, these are all techniques. These are all exercises that we can use to reinvent our personal brand. And one of the frameworks that we use at HALT is something that we call the HALT DNA. The HALT DNA, it's a leadership model. It's based on research. It's a way of looking at our skills and trying to zero in on those skills, those competencies that are most important for our own personal development. And there are 3 different competencies in the HALT DNA. There is the thinking competency, communicating, and team building. In the thinking competency, There are three skills, one related to self-awareness. So this is about emotional intelligence. It's about being socially aware and self-aware. It's about embracing change, being adaptable. Those are skills. Demonstrating dynamic thinking. Dynamic thinking is the connection between creativity and critical thinking. So these are all skills that we work on throughout the master's programs at HALT. Communicating is another competency that we want to develop. And by the way, we are all at different levels in our development for each of these different competencies. So speaking and listening skillfully, being able to influence, and being able to influence with confidence in a psychologically safe working environment. How do I present my ideas? And presenting our ideas effectively does not just mean standing in front of a room of people and giving a presentation, but it's about being able to communicate effectively and being able to be clear and compelling in the way that we are communicating. And then finally, team building. Team building is around building relationships, business relationships, personal relationships. In the course of your time at HALT, you'll have the opportunity to be in a number of different teams with classmates from all over the world. And so the ability to learn how to operate and interact and be productive in a team environment is a very, very important competency in the business world today. How do I inspire productivity? How do I motivate myself? How do I help to motivate my teammates, especially when we're all doing exams and we have a lot of deliverables and we are all very tired? This usually happens in October or November of every academic year. And there's the inevitable conflict that we experience, and that's human nature when we're working in teams. So when you think about the HALT DNA leadership model, thinking and communicating and team building, those are competencies that we want to work on. So I'd like you to take a second and think about these three competencies and the skills that support them, and consider which of these would you like to work on? Which of these might impact your personal brand? And we're going to share a bit of our thinking here. So I'd like you to go to Tomentometer. You can either go to menti.com and type in this code, or just snap the QR code. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. And when you get there, you'll see the first screen that says, consider the HALT DNA skills, thinking, communicating, and team building. Which would you like to work on to reinvent your personal brand? And maybe also add why this particular one? What's compelling for you? Okay, and Angela, I think Stephen typed in the code again. Now, you may be interested in more than one skill. So I know it may be difficult for you to pick just one. But for now, we're just going to stick with one. Let's see. Thinking it's very useful to be able to reinvent oneself and tackle different problems. Okay, team building, communicating. My weakness would be to draw away and be distracted easily during my train of thought. Okay, interesting. That's where some of the self-awareness comes in. If you notice that you tend to be distracted when you're thinking. Okay, thinking sets leaders apart. Communicating will help to build my confidence, helps me to connect better with people. We do a lot of that work in our leadership class. We practice a lot in terms of our communication skills. I feel I need to work on the 3 sub-skills under thinking. We actually have a workbook that we provide to students, so you can dig into each of these competencies as much as you'd like. Team building, the role that I'm in and working to is to involve a lot of these skills. Yeah, they're interchangeable. They're all connected. Reinvent my thinking in teams and improve my communication. Excellent. Okay. So we see there are a couple of them that are working hand in hand. Okay, communication skills are crucial. Strong team dynamics is essential to the success of a project. Excellent. Okay, I'd like to work on my thinking skills. I haven't been at my best since the pandemic started. Self-awareness has been vague. Exactly. A lot of people are thinking the same thing. So being able to actually communicate and talk about some of your experiences, very important. Okay, excellent. So now we can see what everyone on the call is thinking in terms of our next steps and maybe some of the areas that we can focus on in order to reinvent our personal brand. And you know, one comment I always make to my students is that you only get one chance to make a good first impression. You only get one chance to make a good first impression. So what impression do you want to make when you meet someone? And one of the first things that we do when we meet someone is we tell our story, or we tell our personal pitch. So I'd like to share with you another tool that you might want to consider using. Think about if you're meeting someone for the first time and you want to learn about their company. So you can create a personal pitch to introduce yourself and start a conversation with that person. And there are 3 elements to a personal pitch. The first part is a hook, and usually people start with, "Hello, my name is." Try to not start with your name. I know it's difficult because we are trained to do that. But think about, is there a way that you can engage in conversation without using your name? So that's the beginning element. Then the middle element. Think about how you could describe yourself and your passions or your interests. Tell a little bit about yourself and what could you offer to that person. And then the third element is the end. It is the call to action. So what can you ask for? It might be you can ask for their business card. You can ask to connect to them on LinkedIn. You can ask for another meeting. So those are the 3 elements of a personal pitch. And it usually takes 30 to 45 seconds. And you can write out your personal pitch. You can practice it. You can time yourself. So this is all about building your skills and helping to reinvent your personal brand. And so maybe an example of this would be, for myself, have you ever wondered what it would take to be a successful entrepreneur? I believe that human and personal skills are just as important as the technical ones. My name is Pamela Campagna, and I've spent more than 25 years working with organizations to fine-tune the art of persuasion and influence in an authentic way. I'd love to get your thoughts about the best way to engage a new client and their management team. And so you see the hook that I have was to ask a question. And then I talked a little bit about my passion, a little bit about myself, Obviously, I included my name there. And then my call to action was, I'd love to get your thoughts about the best way to engage a new client and their management team. So maybe the next thing I would say after that is, how about if we arrange to have a meeting next Thursday? I'll send you an invitation. So a 45-second personal pitch, which can incorporate some of the things that we just talked about. Think about your spotlight introduction. Think about the 3 competencies in the Hult DNA model. And think about how you might put all of those together in your 45-second pitch. So again, building all of this together, your personal SWOT, take an inventory of yourself. The spotlight, who are you? What are your passions? What are some facts about you? And then what might your personal pitch be? And by the way, the personal pitch can change depending on the situation, depending on who you're talking to, depending on maybe where you are in your career or in your study. Your personal pitch will be different at the beginning of the year when you started Hult from the end of the year after you've graduated. So these 3 elements can help you to reinvent your personal brand. So I'd like to ask you to think about something. Think about one promise that you can make to yourself that will help you to develop your personal brand. What is one promise that you can make to develop your own personal brand? Because this is within your circle of control, can be influenced by other things around you, by your environment, by your education, your study, but it's really up to you in how you would like to develop your own personal brand. And when you think about it, there are ways that you can really put yourself into the world that are more appealing than others, that stand out more than others, that are more compelling than others. I took this photo when I was in Paris a few years ago, and I'm sure each of us has one favorite here in the picture. What makes that favorite stand out? What makes you stand out? What makes you different? What do you want your personal brand to signify? And so with that, I'd like to welcome you to our global community. This is my consulting class from a few weeks ago. A lot of very happy consultants. We had an intense journey. We had clients from the Middle East and Asia, Latin America, and the US. And we were all working on consulting engagements for those clients, and they were very happy to be done. Many of these students are graduating in 10 days. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for your attention. And I guess, Stephen, we're going to open it up for questions.